All right, so we've been able to grab functions from the console, import them. We've been able to test them locally via Python, also test them via API gateway. So we have this, complete workflow that we've showed. Okay, now how do we get this back into AWS? Well, fortunately, Cloud9 has a solution there as well. If I right-click on this Change Me Lambda that we created, there's a section here that says Deploy. And if I click on Deploy, what happens is that it'll automatically take my packaged application and deploy that into the AWS ecosystem. And what's powerful about this is I can now test this either inside the console of AWS, or I can go through and I can test it within a remote call as well. So if I right-click on this and I say Run, I can say Run API Gateway Remote, and what that will do is it'll allow me, again, remote here, to test it inside of AWS. Great, so now that this is deployed, let's tap into one of the most powerful features of Cloud9. I can actually test that using the API gateway, but a remote API gateway. So I'm going to toggle that, and now I can do the same thing I did earlier. I can create a post function method, and I can pass in a payload. In this case, let's pass in a payload of $2.59. Once I select Run, the difference here is that this is actually running inside of AWS itself. And so you can see the endpoint request goes to Amazon now. It doesn't go locally. So I'm actually executing code against that remote server. Let's go ahead and take a look at how that works now. So if I go to the console and I look inside of Lambda, it'll actually give me the ability to look through the execution logs. So if I go to Lambda, I should see now that there's a Cloud9 Change Me demo that's been created and automatically deployed from the Cloud9 environment. And if I scroll down here to monitoring, you can see that actually it's been invoked. And I can also go through here and look at the logs. And if we look at the logs, we should see that $2.59 call. And in fact, we see that this was called remotely. And here's actually the complete pathway. And here's actually a JSON payload that shows that that was called. So again, this is an incredibly powerful workflow where I can set up a Lambda function locally, configure it, test it locally, deploy it by right-clicking on it, then testing it in the deployed environment to make sure that it works properly, and then it completely instruments and checks out my code for me. The last thing I'll end up here with is if I go back to the Cloud9 environment, if you remember that this is where I would go through and I would configure it. Well, if we scroll down, notice here that there's a different input now. This is a different trigger. So we've always had this CloudWatch trigger, but the API gateway now is configured. And I also can go through here and I can actually select that endpoint if I wanted to, and I could actually make API calls using, let's say, Postman or using a curl. And so I've really quickly created this complete end-to-end pipeline, and it all started with Cloud9.